All right, there we go. Episode 3. Here we go. Episode 3. I know that we had previously discussed this one's going to be more about kind of school, about so many different things about school, and pretty much addressing all those things. And yeah, definitely looking forward to this one. I think it'll be another great conversation.
Yeah.
There we go. So, with the topic being school, I remember we kind of alluded to in really episode 1 that when we were talking about school is um, the distinct difference in the seemingly the importance of funding as far as whether it goes to athletics and sports related things versus then the art programs and stuff like that. So I guess I kind of wanted to get into that and get your opinion on that and kind of just start the conversation off that way.
Yeah, I had brought up like in the first episode how with like the agriculture program that I had in my school, like their budget literally was like $500, and that was for the entire school year. And mind you, the agriculture department, they had animals, like small animals that they had to take care of and all this stuff, and like that budget was basically designated for those animals. So you can imagine trying to, you know, spit like spare out $500. So most of the funding that they had literally came out of their own pocket, and then I just knew that like most of the major funding went into like either getting new technology for the school or went into like the athletics department or whatever. And honestly, like even though I'm only talking about agriculture, I feel like other departments probably didn't really get as much love of either as like the theater department or like even the arts department. And like I just know that when it comes to being a teacher, like I know that a lot of teachers, they usually will like most of the supplies they would provide for the students, like they would have to either like pay out of their own pocket or they would have to like ask for donations from the students. It's like they can't get that, the funding that they need from the actual school itself. So I always thought it was interesting um, to like think about it that way because yeah, I don't know. It's like it's frustrating too, because especially when if we're talking about like the arts department or any sort of creative department that a school might have, and it's not getting the right amount of funding, it can sort of like it's like there's just so much potential to be had, if certain departments had the right amount of like money going towards it, and like as there are a lot of kids who may be interested in doing something like art or writing or music or whatever, and they're going into these programs that are probably like at get to a point where they're like super outdated, and like they can't really like allocate the money to upgrade the stuff that they have because they may not have again like the funding. So it's just it creates a lot of problems, and like yeah, I don't know, it's a complicated subject to talk about, I think, but yeah, that's sort of like my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I completely understand. I get that, and I'm I'm with you in a sense that I know that I know that managing budget and stuff for school and stuff like that, I know that that can't be easy, right? I
Yeah.
know that there, like when you have a sports team, for instance, you have to have then uniforms, and you have to have different things. You have to be able to like provide like food and stuff before events or games and all types of stuff. I understand that, but it just seems like that there's a way to have balance, with
Yeah.
all things. I think there's a way to kind of, I don't know, distribute things more evenly. And like maybe, and I even see like a thing like, how, um, like say a particular program, kind of like what you alluded to, will have like a donation thing or stuff like that. I kind of feel like that should just be like it should never be like a separate thing like that. Sometimes I think it should be a school thing because one, you're liable to get more donations if it's recognized as a school wide thing rather than just, I guess, particular department. And then that way, when you get those funds, then you're able to, evenly kind of push those out and, I don't know. I just think that it seems like there could be several ways to kind of fix that. Just to so kind of because it plays. I feel like at least it plays into the psyche of kind of the social hierarchy that exists in high school in the sense that, of course, like if you're participating in something that's not athletic related and the funding and stuff isn't the same for you, or it does, or your program is like lower on the totem pole of the school, then it definitely kind of plays into, like, you kind of feel that way, like you kind of feel like your thing is lesser. Obviously that not being the case, but I could only like imagine that that's the feeling and that's the sentiment, and this is coming from someone that did participate in high school athletics. Like I that I guess saying that, like, I'm not blind to those issues, and I definitely see it, and I definitely um, I don't know. I just feel like there could be something to change that. I feel like on the collegiate level, I understand it a little bit more, only because there's so much money coming in from certain like events and stuff like that. But and obviously, like if a full stadium in a football game like holds a lot of people and like generates a lot of money, but I just feel like at the high school level that there has to be some kind of, you know, because and here's the reason I think at the high school level there has to be some kind of balance as far as the funds that are spread out and everything. When someone typically those programs at the college level are established and they're already in like a good spot, and once someone gets to college they can really pursue the things that they really, you know, want to go after and things like that. In high school it's not the same, and you know, if you do have interest in these things, it's like it's not fair that you go to the same school, you know, that one person doesn't have something over the other. Like you should have, you know, equal, I don't know, I guess opportunity for your program to grow just as much as an athletic program in a sense. And I don't know. I definitely think that just is something that um, has to be corrected. Just because I don't know, it gives the impression that, like, kind of like I was alluding to earlier, that somehow that the athletes or the athletics are more valuable than any other student pursuing any other thing, especially something like art related or like in any capacity really. Yeah, it just, I don't know. I don't like the fact that it could impact like how someone feels about, and maybe not even feels about themselves, but feels about like pursuing certain things. Like, um, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think that I think so. I mean, I don't know. I could just imagine that, you know, especially because living in a southern state, for instance, right, where like those like different sports are, you know, valued very high, right? Um, you know, I could see like someone like wanting to do art stuff and wanting to do more like art related things, and then just happen to participate in some kind of like sport just because that's what's valued, and not even just as a school but like society kind of values that more. So it's almost as like you feel like that's the case. But again, like we talked about previously, it's and this is not like a shot at athletes again, because you know I was one, but at the same time there is more likelihood of someone being getting successful or becoming something like of prominence in an art field than there is, like it's like a really small chance that someone like leaves their school for athletics and then goes to college and then becomes some like a professional, like, you know, like the likelihood of that for, I don't know, I so that alone I feel like just logically it would seem like that they would then put, I don't know, programs on equal footing. But I mean, we definitely see that that's not the case.
Yeah. I um I agree with you. I feel like, I guess, touching back on like the whole, I guess, financial standpoint of things, like, because I mean, I guess thinking about it, if we're talking about like high school, it does
Mhm.
sort of like, I guess, make sense from like a financial, um, I guess, like business standpoint to like allocate more towards like something like athletics or whatever, because one of the biggest things that people associate with high school is like the football games, like the pep rallies and stuff like that. And so I guess if it would or the basketball games or whatever. And so obviously the thing would be like, well, why would we allocate a lot of our money to something like an arts program when like because realistically a lot more people are going to be more inclined to like want to go to like think of yourself like a high schooler, you're more inclined to want to go to like a football game or a basketball game because it's like the appeal of it, like it's more exciting, it's whatever, versus like
Yeah.
going to like a school play, and that's no shade towards the drama kids or whatever, because I've been to my fair share of school plays. My best friend was in
Same.
theater, so like but like, so I mean it makes sense, but again it's still I there definitely needs to be that balance though
Right.
of and like just going back to what I was saying, like if we gave these arts programs like more basically, like again, like these programs, they have potential, like kids, like if you give them the necessary tools, like you don't know what they can create. And like some people have all this like skill and like creativity, and like it's just, I don't know, I think it's also just like the lack of opportunities that comes with like lack opportunities that comes with having a lack of money at
Yes.
at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, but yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that though.
Yeah, well, and I think one, I want to say that, yeah, I know that I guess I know that it's not like a realistic thing for me to think that like people are just not going to, like, Friday night lights, like go and see
Yeah,
a football game or go and see like a basketball game and things like that. I think that I'm more thinking about, okay, so football, like say the football games happen, the football season happens, right? The full year of the season, and they generate like a certain amount of revenue, like, and they say they generate a lot from like whatever, from ticket sales, from concessions, all those things, right? The end of the year, like I feel like the athletic director is like, all right, perfect, new uniforms, like,
yeah,
and like
yeah,
where that
yeah,
could kind of be spread out amongst like a school
yeah,
is really like you want to fund that money to the school like overall, and I feel like
yeah,
instead it's like, and I even kind of witnessed that in the sense that I feel like, yeah, like every year of high school, like my football team, we had like new uniforms, like, or new ton of new gear and stuff like that, like every single year, which is great. Like, and at the time, I was very appreciative of, like, and everything.
yeah,
But like in hindsight, it's kind of like, well, like we could have missed out on a couple of hoodies or a couple like new
yeah,
jerseys or colorways for a certain program to get more funding or things like that. And I just that's the part of it I feel like could just be more even. I just think it all needs to be kind of like spread out. So it feels like that what you do, what other people do is valued, and that, because I know I'm going to keep using this word or this term, but, and I've used it quite a bit already, but the social like hierarchy thing, right? It just kind of, it, it almost validates it within high school, because we all know that once you leave those doors, it does not matter like who the
yeah,
popularity part does not translate. But the I think I guess I think about the fact that if one thing is getting prioritized over the other, it's obviously going to impact the views that people have on different things. Like they're going to view things differently if, well, obviously the football team and the basketball team, et cetera, is more important because they get, the nicest stuff and all the different things. Like, I don't know. I think that's just natural, and I feel like it would naturally play into, even subconsciously play into the student psyche. And then you kind of think like lesser of the things that you're interested in or the things that you could do at your school. And it's almost like I've even had conversations with people where it feels like they're kind of like putting those things on the back burner until they get to college, like just to not
yeah,
even, just because it feels like that there's like a glass ceiling over what their program can be, and what they can get out of it, just because like, I don't know. It just feels like there should be more. And I know that that is also a regional thing. I know that that's not the same everywhere, like what we're discussing. Um, but I don't know. It would just be nice if it was the same, if it was like that here, just because I feel like there's so much. I mean, I feel like there are talented people and talented artists with unique gifts and skills everywhere, and I think that if we're able to embrace them, we're going to even generate more artists than we already have, and especially, and I know we talked about this a little bit too in episode one, but the game has kind of changed in the YouTube era of things, in the sense of, or not even YouTube era. When I say YouTube, I'm not even specifically talking about YouTube. I'm talking about all the different platforms that we now have to be able to get yourself out there and get your talent out there, um, express yourself online. There's endless like opportunity for that, and so it just feels like nowadays like we should kind of evolve with the times in that sense, right? It's not 1980 anymore, and um, I don't know. I just feels like we should be able to put a spotlight on, share that spotlight on our entire school, like our entire campus, rather than just like over here and where things are really like, or everybody wants to stand over like one side. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and even like I guess speaking more on the social hierarchy sort of like discussion, I feel like I heard somewhere it was like speaking on how like people who are sort of like more, I guess like the obviously like the popular kids
Mhm.
tend to be like favored more from like administration and teachers and all that, and then like if you have like the regular kids whatever, or like the introverts whatever, they're
Yeah,
sort of like pushed to the side, and they're not really seen as like, not as valuable, but not as like, I don't know, just not really treated in the same way as like the popular kids are. And
yeah,
like you even see like the popular kids getting away with more stuff and like being able
yeah.
to do more, have more privileges, whatever. So I don't know. I feel like, because at least for me, like in school, I was sort of one of the loners, like mainly like the quiet kids, and so I saw that dynamic all the time, and I thought it was so interesting to me, and like in a way that sort of my, but like the funny thing is like I've, it was like a joke, not really a joke, but like a saying that like it's usually the popular kids that, no, it's usually like the quiet kids, or like the kids that remain low key, that like go out and do like, awesome stuff, and
Yeah,
they end up becoming like the success story, and then like the popular kids, like since they peaked during that time,
yeah,
it's like now once they leave school, they're just like, okay, no one really cares
yeah.
about them anymore.
Right.
So it's like it's a, yeah, I don't know, it's interesting to think about, and I feel as if I don't really know like if I don't know, because I know that like there are those people who sort of take that same mindset even like once they leave school,
Hmm.
and like whether it's in the workplace or if it's within their friends or even like with their families, like it makes me think like if, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say, but
You got it.
if people, if we could ever like sort of, I guess, break out of that system of like pitting ourselves against each other, or like I've
Yeah.
even seen sort of, because like you'll even see like teachers doing it too, sort of
Yeah.
like
Oh, for
comparing
sure.
students to one another and all that shit, and I don't know, it's just like, I don't know, yeah. My brain's all over the place, but
No, no,
yeah.
I hear you for sure. I mean, that definitely is a thing. It's something that I definitely remember, is like almost like pandering in a sense to more like known students, and like more like, I don't know. I mean, that's just, I remember that being a huge thing. And I guess like something for me, that so I was involved in a lot of things. I participated in yearbook like all 4 years of high school, and in sports and different things like that. So I was involved in a lot. And one thing I couldn't like stand is like, I don't, I'm not a fan of like someone just a thinking that they're better than someone in the first place. As I mean, just as like a person, that's just not like a thing for me. But
Stupid.
yeah, exactly. And oh my gosh, I cannot stand the fact of like, say I was hanging out with a group of friends. I say friends in quotations because I feel like in high school, you realize that like after high school that a lot of the like surface level friends that you had were only your friends because you saw them every day. It wasn't that you
Yeah.
had like a ton in common or like that you were truly like friends. But I I don't know. Like I didn't like the idea of like I'd be talking to like a group of people and like and we'd be hanging out and everything, and then I'd go leaving because I like talking to everyone. To be honest, I just like ironically a social butterfly at times, and so I like to engage with all types of people, and so I find people interesting too. So like it's a thing for me to it's stimulating, I guess, to talk to people and find like different things about them and stuff like that. Like I remember like times like going to talk to like say I was talking to this group and then go to talk to like this group or talk to this like kid over here or something like that, and like sometimes it wouldn't be like they wouldn't come out and say it, but it would almost be implied like why are you talking to them, or like you can't be talking to them because you hang out with us, like
Yeah.
that for me, that was the silliest thing ever. I hated that just because it was like, oh my gosh, like because then you can kind of like read in that people are really taking this like to heart. Like, they really think that like I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's so silly. Even being like still like not too far removed from that period of my life. It still in hindsight just bugs me, and it's just I don't know. It's so silly. Like so because you don't like with your diploma they don't give you like, oh, by the way, this is your social card too, this is your social status,
Yeah.
like use this, swipe this on your phone, you'll get more Instagram followers and everything will change, like all like I don't know it that I don't know, I just found that part just silly. But yeah, no, teachers like definitely played a role into it. And I think a lot of it too is you have to think too that there's a lot of instances where like obviously the coaches aren't just coaches, like they are also teachers as well, they do things within the school, so obviously they're going to pay more attention and pander to their players or their like or people that are related to their program in some way. And I don't know that that is I don't know. Again, I don't like it. I guess in hindsight, especially as my mind is kind of opened up more on the how like perception can be everything in a sense. Like if you're say you're a kid in the back that is not getting like a ton of attention, stuff like that, sometimes that can play into your psyche and kind of make you feel like you are invisible or that you are lesser and things like that. And then when someone is highlighted as this like unattainable person in a sense, uh,
Yeah.
it makes you feel like you could never like almost I almost said matter, but that's kind of what I mean, like almost like never matter as much as them, which obviously could not be further from the truth. But that doesn't mean that it's hard to like when you're in high school and you're in there for all like years of high school, it's hard to not let that, I guess, play into your mindset. Or I'd imagine that it's hard to let that not play into your mindset. And I don't know. I guess in a way, I kind of made it, I don't know, a point to be different. And I guess I'm different in general. Like I never like following like the crowd or anything like that. Even, I don't know, just I'm very much someone who wants to be an individual, I guess, and I guess even thinking as an individual. And so I don't know. I tried my very best to not fall into that trap and to I don't know, make sure I was the same person always, meaning like no matter who I was talking to, no matter giving the same kind of energy and the same kind of um, I don't know. I guess like I never wanted I would never want someone to have the feeling after talking to me that I somehow thought that I was on some elevated
Yeah, for
platform.
sure.
Yeah. So I I mean I know some people that are the exact opposite in that like you said they peaked that time too. Like that was as high as it's gonna get. And like I even unfortunately, like I still see people, some people like walking around with their Letterman like to this day, and it's like, oh man, that's tough. But I don't know. That's the danger, I guess, of that. Like, and I think it's important to say it as a danger because that shows you that it doesn't just impact those who are in school and say like more of the like, well, like you would say like I guess loner type or things like that. Not only does it play an impact on them while they're in high school, but then after high school, the people that thought they were all world, like when the world and society does not care, which they don't care,
Yeah.
then I can imagine that like impacting your psyche as well, and just like I don't know, like that they don't care on your job application if you were like prom king or whatever, like like they that just doesn't translate, and so I don't know. I feel like it's a thing for I don't know for both sides really. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole just like yeah, the whole like status thing is stupid.
Yeah.
Once you, cause like once you get that reality check and you realize that you're not as hot as you thought you were, you know what I mean? Like in that sense,
Yeah.
like
Right.
you know. So and I feel the same way. I had also, cause like for me, I really didn't stop really like I didn't stop caring about what people thought of me until I hit like my junior year. I don't know what happened to me junior year of high school, but that was just sort of like the year where I just like really just stopped giving a fuck about what anyone thought of me, and like
Right.
I just like I don't know, like I like started to embrace sort of like being, I guess, being an introvert.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
not really like preferring to sort of like be by myself and like just doing things on my own, and like not
Yeah.
just not trying to sort of like hide who I was in that sense.
Yeah.
And not feeling ashamed for like, because I'll be honest, I was, up in the cafeteria eating lunch by myself, happy, because like people wasn't bothering me and stuff. But like, I feel like the younger version of me would have been like sad and like feeling sorry for myself and all that. But once you sort of get to a point where you realize, like, literally, at least when it comes to high school, like, it's only 4 years, right? And people say, like,
Yeah.
oh, you need to enjoy these years, they're gonna go by quick, blah, 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 and make the most
Yeah.
of it, whatever. And it's like, yeah, you can, but just understand that, like, there's more to life outside of school. And
Yeah.
there's more to life outside of those 4 years, and that your whole world does not have to be what happens in
Right.
that school building. So,
Yeah.
like, just know that, like, once you hit like the real world, and like once graduation hits, you're gonna realize, like, oh, like I was really stressing over all this shit and it didn't even matter. Like, damn,
Right.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So just, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, and I'm the same way. Like, I would never want to like come off to someone as if like, oh, I'm better than you, or oh, like whatever. Like, it's just
Yeah.
because that shit is corny too. And
It,
like, there's a difference between like, obviously people say there's a difference between like confidence and then like arrogance, and like you can be confident and whatever, and still like have like respect for yourself and respect for other people, and be able to see other people's like your equal, and like be humble, whatever.
mhm.
And so it's just, yeah, I don't know, the whole like showing off the fact that you were prom queen, and like the fact that you were valedictorian and all this stuff is like, I mean, that's cool, but like in the
Yeah.
long run, no one's really gonna care about that. So like, I
Yeah.
don't know, just yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think you brought up a really like big point, and I about that you got to your junior year and just like like as far as like the care
Yeah, I
about
don't know what happened. It's
yeah.
just
But I think it highlights something. I think it highlights like part of high school that's great, right? Which I know it sounds like we're bagging high school so much, but it's that's really not the point. I think it's just a kind of like our whole premise, I guess, right, with our podcast is to be able to highlight different sides of things. Like I feel like sometimes like I feel like for the most part, probably podcasts centered around high school are talking about the glory days of high school and how like wonderful it was. And sometimes it's good to give a peek into the other side of things and just shine the light on what could have been different and the things that weren't that great. But one of the positives about high school, I would say even more so in college, but in high school, I feel like you start to develop at least partially the person you're going to become, right? You start developing like the type of people that you want to be around, the kind of things that you want to attend, like all those things kind of start developing. So in a sense, like, but like it make it. I know you're like I don't know what happened, but it makes sense. It makes sense that you got to a point where you're just like I'm just gonna be me. Like I don't care like what is happening, and so I want to speak on that because so I'll say from like elementary school, for instance, like I had like something called like excessive growth hormone. So I grew like really fast. I was always like a bigger kid. Like that always was a thing, right? And so in elementary school and stuff, like at times made me like a subject of bullying, right? And so like, and that played into my psyche a lot. That definitely kind of started putting me in a state where I was not not I wouldn't say depressed quite at that moment, but I would say that my self-esteem, my confidence, all those things were just low. And then getting to middle school, like I started having like real life situations that were really affecting me that like definitely did get me in like more of a depressive like state and stuff like that. And so I would start projecting like this person who was like I I think that I don't know. It's weird. I think that at times I can be an introvert. I think at times I can be an extrovert. I think it just kind of fluctuates for me. But um, I would say that I started projecting like overly extrovert. Like I would I had for some reason I was trying so hard to be like the class clown. I was trying so hard to present this like almost overwhelming like positivity and stuff like that. And would in reality it was a mask to cover
Mm-hmm.
up like all the things I was really dealing with and managing. And I think probably around I think it was more for me. I think it was like around my sophomore year of high school because my freshman year I was just like I don't know, like it was all so new, and I was still trying starstruck about as I was in high school and stuff like that, and all the different things. But I definitely think around my sophomore year that I don't know. There was a lot of factors to be honest. I think that I started to appreciate my self image more. I started to get more noticed for like my writing and things like that. Um, I was getting more like attention as far as like we'll say like dating and stuff like that goes. And because of that, I think I started to become comfortable with who I was. And comfortable with who I was in the sense that I realized that because for so long I had put on this like kind of a front uh, for so long that when I got to that point, it was kind of like, what am I doing? And what I started to realize is when I just like, I don't know, relaxed and just started being like true to myself and being myself. What's ironic about the whole thing is I started to get like more like friends and things like that whenever I was authentic to myself. And when I
Yeah.
really just was true to myself, it's like people liked that more than like, I don't know. And than what I was, I guess, trying to be so desperately for so long. So I don't know. That made me like I guess like really just fall into like okay, I'm just gonna be me. I'm just gonna be myself because I mean what I was trying so hard for before is exactly what I'm getting whenever I just am myself. And myself is someone who is complex. I would say myself is someone who's interested in a ton of different things. Could talk about a multitude of things. Could probably go from a conversation about sports to a conversation about anime to politics to just I'm into a lot of different things. I I don't know like the way I like dress at times like all types of things are all like I guess unique to myself. And I don't know. I guess I started to, like I said, just get comfortable in that role. And I will say this, I think too, because of that and because of me being able to be, I guess, versatile in that sense, it definitely allowed for me to, um, I guess, naturally, right? You start to fit into more places because you can kind of fit in with anyone. Like you're like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing too. That's the thing I guess that's silly about high school. We hide things that we don't think that. Oh well, that's not like the cool thing to be into, or but I even though you like
Yeah.
it, it's not the cool thing or the popular thing to be into. So you kind of hide that part of yourself, which is so silly because like as people, we aren't just like robotic in the sense that we only like a couple things or only
Mm-hmm.
certain things matter to us or like I don't know. It just in hindsight, it just is so silly. But like, I mean, that it just shows you, I guess, how like as a youth, how sheltered you are from like reality, and like I remember in high school, like around I would say my junior year, like late junior year, senior year, that I was like, God, like I was so tired. Like I felt like everybody wore the same outfits. I feel like everybody tried to fit into the same like things. I was like, gosh, I'm so tired of seeing Patagonia and like Clark boots and like I got Impol. Like I'm so like I was like, does everybody just like go to the same exact place? Like what is going on? Hairstyles are the exact same. Like I was like, oh man, like I was not feeling it. And so I'll full disclosure, like, yes, I enjoyed high school at times, but uh, by like towards the end of my senior year, I was ready to go. I was ready to be out of there. Like it was just like, I don't know. I couldn't, it's like I couldn't deal with it anymore. Like just the in on, like this, I don't know, like people just not being like authentic and real and approachable. And like, um, that's why I think so. Like when I graduated and went to like college, I met like some of my best friends ever. Like just in that first freshman year of college, just because I don't know, it's like I could sense that no longer mattered. Like all those like things that seemed to matter in high school didn't matter anymore. People were really genuine to who they were. So you got an immediate reading on the people that you're running into or meeting and things like that. And so I don't know. It just those and now those friendships for me are I'm the type of friendships where I literally like we'll text like every day, like something like and talk every day at some point. I can't say that about like the high school. Like I have friends that I knew before high school that I'm like really close with, but as far as like some of them, like I see them every now and again on Instagram, and that's it. Like that's it's not that
Yeah.
I'm trying to maintain those friendships just because they weren't. I don't know. They weren't because some of the people weren't projecting authenticity. I wasn't able to give them authenticity back, and then because of that, we weren't authentically friends because we were just we were like associates that happened to see each other all the time. So it's like, might as well talk to this person about whatever, like just because, that's the thing. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, and I feel like that subject, I mean, that's just something that I feel like a lot of people can relate to in a sense of like their views and stuff towards high school and what it was like during that time frame and stuff. Um, it was an interesting time. But what I would like to, I guess, transition into is curriculum of high school. I think I want
Yeah.
to talk about that. I know we had some thoughts about that, especially when it comes to certain things. I, so I want to say that I appreciate like I could tell my high school was attempting to kind of because my high school was built in 2010. I was a part of the first class to go from like the middle school all the way through the high school part of it. And so 2010, I could tell that in high school they were trying to be more progressive with what they were like teaching us and stuff. Like for instance, offering like women's history as a class and like different things like that. I could tell that they were trying in that sense. I just felt like there was still so much more that could have been addressed. I feel like in naturally in history, especially U.S. history, which I'm a fan of history in general, but I feel like certain figures are still highlighted and like talked about in a prominent way. Maybe they shouldn't be. Uh, and I don't know. There's so many things to address, but and especially I want to address Black history in school because oh my God. But I'll let you kind of go first and get your thoughts about like just curriculum and how that could have been different or what you enjoyed. Like just kind of get that from you.
So I guess just like the biggest thing that I feel like my high school at least, because I know that stuff like personal finance classes, stuff like that, are still sort of like a relatively new thing in schools. And my school, Jesus, my personal finance like department, if you want to even want to call it that, like they had the potential, but they
Right.
just did not
Yeah.
execute it
Right.
accordingly.
Right.
When I tell you my personal finance class consisted of during the week, Monday through Thursday, we would have to do like these packets, or we would have to like do like textbook questions, and then every Friday we would watch Shark Tank, and that was it.
Yeah.
I didn't learn shit in that class, and I'm so mad. I feel like I got scammed. Like,
Right.
and the fact that I had to take it, it was like a required credit. It was just ridiculous.
Right.
So I definitely feel like definitely a lot of work that needs to be done, and just again also with the whole like lack of teaching of Black history, and like only focusing on like as the schools would consider like the important parts. Like it's just I don't know, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so one the reason so I laughed at a part about the Shark Tank part because that exact same thing definitely happened in one of my classes. Like at first I thought it was like really cool. I really enjoyed like okay, like at least I enjoyed it at first. What I realized is that it really just made me better at watching Shark Tank. Like I started to
yeah.
understand percentages more. I was like, oh, okay. like watching it later, I was like, see, like no, that's a terrible. Like I found myself like analyzing that's the pitches and stuff like that more. But yeah, no, I agree. I think that um, just there needs to be more real world classes, like have to be more real world classes, because there are skills that we should learn before like just society like hits us in the face. Like we should
Yeah.
be able to learn certain things. Like there should be classes about like I don't know, like just balance, like I guess keeping like managing a bank account, right? And what that looks like, and going through like the pending fees, like withdrawals, like deposits, like going through all those things, going through. I know it's kind of old school to do that, but I think it's still a good financial skill to have. Is like balancing a checkbook, for instance, managing like a credit card. All those things should have been
Mm-hmm.
things that we should have been. They should have been required classes that we really like. Like in a sense, sometimes I think to myself like I didn't have much of an option because I'm pretty sure I had like a weightlifting or like PE every like semester because I was like my coaches kind of went over they kind of made sure I was in those classes, if that makes sense. But I kind of wish that those classes sometimes weren't requirements, and that you could just have classes that I don't know, just broaden things up and maybe shorten some classes, because if we're being honest, our attention span is not lasting over the hour and a half. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
let's maybe condense classes and maybe give us more elements of like online or more elements of discussions, because that was something too. So I met my favorite teacher I've ever had when I was in high school. And part of the reason that I was such a fan of them is because the fact that their class wasn't just like, um, we're gonna go through all like 25 of the slides I made last night, and then we're gonna like take some like tests or quizzes about it, or I'm just gonna have you all take notes for like 3 straight class periods or things like that. We actually literally had open discussions,
Yeah.
like would literally bring up a subject and we would just talk amongst the group. And it was open to disagree, and it made it a point that everyone got their opportunity to talk and say things, which made it feel inclusive, which was great. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that should be the structure of so many classes. And I think that's why I favored having that teacher, just because it was just like, this is such a breath of fresh air. It's so different from, the traditional sense of, and I'm sure that we still did like regular class things, and I'm don't even put that on them more so than it. I think it just we had to do those things just because it's the curriculum that we have to cover, or we have to do like specific things. But for the most part, it was so different than you know other classes. But yeah, I always thought that we should shorten classes. They should be more in depth, and we should cover like important things that happen. But then we should have real life, like you should be required. Like, yeah, we should go over um, say that you have classes that hit like all the subjects, right? Like say you have like 4 classes designed for that. Well, then like you should have like another like 4 that are real life things. Like, and we should be talking about so many things, especially at the time. Oh gosh, there needs to be classes over like how to be a decent person, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
just how to, I don't know, like just there should be a class over relationships. There should be a class
Hmm.
over more in-depth class over sex education because,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
frank,
Yeah.
I love the person I'm about to talk about like to death, but one of my high school head football coach at the time was my health teacher.
Mm.
Introduced the class. The first initial class that we had is today we're going to talk about peaches, plums, and bananas, and that was his way to, right. So
Wow.
so like I don't know. We just the things they. I feel like if I don't know, it helps society if at that age when you're so impressionable still with material that if we go over those things, it just would change so many things. I really do. I feel like if people had like more information, it would allow them to understand themselves more, right? If we have
Yeah.
a class about like, okay, like literally like discussing the fact of like rejection and how to manage that. And because some people don't know how to ever process those things, so they take that rejection and turn it into like obviously more aggressive and terrible thing.
Hmm.
Like there should be, I don't know, we should just be talking about all those things. There should be classes about
Yeah.
all those things, and there's not, and that is a crime.
Yeah.
And and then the okay, so I'm preparing myself for the Black History tangent. Okay, all right. There's oh, it's so flawed. Let me start out by saying this is pre-high school. Okay. Um, so I remember I want to say that it was in the 3rd grade, because the thing about history books is you all may only talk about a certain amount of things. You may only talk about specific things in the history book. That doesn't mean that the history books don't contain information about other things, because once upon a time, a probably however old you are in 3rd grade, you can't process that at the moment. Maximilian asked his teacher, so seeing this group, we're talking about like Martin Luther King, of course, because it's seemingly that he is the only figure in Black history. Um, so I remember us talking about Martin Luther King, and then of course in that same like it's like the next page in the corner. I still remember it kind of vividly. It was like the talking about the Black Panther Party, and I was like, struck my attention, like as a kid, and I don't know about this already. So I remember asking my teacher, and her response, I kid you not, was they're the black version of the KKK. And just how like in hindsight how wrong that was, like how like just how terrible that was of information to tell me, because when you're a kid too, you don't like, okay, teacher said that,
Yeah.
so
You'll believe anything. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, well, there's that. It just I, I don't know, like just being social. And then I had another teacher, like I want to say like it was like 2 years later, again going over Black history. I was talking for hours upon hours about Martin Luther King, and then there being a section about Malcolm X, asking about Malcolm X because I'm a kid, so I'm curious about this person who has a letter for their last name, and like wanted to know more about them. And it's like, oh, he was like talked about him in a negative light, and I just like at the time just okay, like just kind of going with it, and then realizing later in life like, oh my god, like because now some of the people that I would say influenced by the most are members of who were previous members of the Black Panther Party or Malcolm X. Like those are the people that like literally shaped my influence now. And so thinking about it just is terrible. So high school. Um, so I would say middle school and high school, there was a period where it felt like we talked about slavery, and then we skipped several years ahead to the civil rights movement. We talked about Rosa Parks. We talked about Martin Luther King. Then we moved on. We just kind of, and that was like, okay, Black history. We talked about it. it's so bad. I mean, it's so bad. And I remember it being the same. I remember that being like the same pattern. Like now, granted, there was 2 years in a row where I had in high school where I had a really good history teacher, and we really did go. And she probably went as in depthly as she could about specific things and tried to like provide more information. But at the same time, it felt like we were just. I don't know. It's just amazing to me how much we skip over and how much we don't talk about. And how many like interesting facts there are about Black history. Like Black history is amazing, and it just seems like you can tell that history is purposely whitewashed, or at least like the
Yeah.
curriculum is purposely like directed in certain ways. I'm sure it's different for some other states, but at least I can speak for Southern states in the sense that it is just it's so bad, and I don't know. In hindsight, I'm like, gosh, like, I wish I could just like attend a board meeting, like a school board meeting, and just be like, listen, we're redoing all of this, like this whole section of history. First of all, we need more than like 2 weeks to cover like
Yeah.
history.
For
So
real.
we gotta widen this up like a little bit. And I don't know about your experience, but also going to a predominantly white school. Um, I definitely had instances of like when we were talking about slavery, like I would first of all, likely I was the only person of color in my class, and I would get like the occasional like girl like over off to the side, like when talking about it, like or like stuff like that, like I don't know. It was just such a crazy time of just like, oh man, like this, and then like the teacher. I even had a teacher once who was like would talk about certain things, and then like almost as if they were addressing me, like just like me in particular.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, yeah. What a oh man. There's so many things I wish we could change. Um, I don't know. There's just so many people that need to be talked about in history and need to be acknowledged in history, and so many different instances. And I, is it bad too? And I'm curious of your opinion on this. Is it is it just me, or does slavery need its own section in history, like when you're covering history as a curriculum? And does it, because I don't know if I like the fact that it's attached to Black history in general. Meaning, like, I don't like, yes, that's like part of the story, but you're almost like taking away what you can cover about Black history by talking about slavery, which is not, and not talking about the amazing things that have been accomplished by Black people. It's talking about like just torture and a terrible time frame in
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
And also, and the reason I say a separate thing because I don't think when we're talking about the formation of America that we should talk about slavery, because it shouldn't be attached to that painful time in history. Shouldn't be attached to like just European like exploration. Like we shouldn't. It should almost be its own thing. We should talk about how like the depths of what it looked like and how bad it was and all those things, so people get like an understanding of why, like one, why there is almost like there, I guess, giving background to the fact that there is trauma in the US by just being a person of color, right? Like there's natural trauma in that. There's natural, and that is comes from literally generations like above ours. Um, and I don't know, I just feel like that should be something. But no, Black history though, there we should like, I don't know, there just should be more. And as much as I love Martin Luther King, we should obviously like we should recognize him in history. He is not the sole person in history. I feel like that he is the I hate using this term, but I think it's true. I feel like he's the most comfortable person for white people to talk about in history. I feel like he's the most comfortable source because he was very peaceful in nature and the way he tried to go about things. But the problem is that yeah, he did. He was that all those things. He was an amazing person, all those things, and still got killed. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of brings me back to we talked. It's been a reoccurring thing to talk about the summer of last year on our podcast, but I mean, it's such a big moment in time. I remember our leader, quote unquote, at the time, tweeting out things like there should be like peaceful protests and things like that, and that there shouldn't be like certain things that are happening and stuff like that. And I remember like people who were in line with that person tweeting out several Martin Luther King quotes, like several, like, just because they were trying to represent like the piece and misrepresent, like, because, oh, so many things.
Yeah.
But I remember I follow Martin Luther King's daughter on Twitter, and I remember her, whenever this was happening, she tweeted out like a picture of him in his casket, and basically that saying what I said, like basically, please stop using all these quotes because this was the end result of what he was trying
Right.
to do. And like I thought that was so big because like, yes, like exactly, like what are we saying? And then also what I thought was funny is a quote that I started posting after quite a while was a quote from Martin Luther King as well, and that rioting is the voice of the unheard, meaning that we have spent years upon years protesting and things like that and marching and all these things for nothing to happen, and to be honest, things to even considerably sometimes get worse with certain elements. um, and so and I'm not, and when I say that, I'm not saying that like rioting is the way to go about things, because I like and but I guess my point is that you're you're not listening anyway. So that's why stuff like that
Yeah.
happens. Like, so um, I don't know. I just didn't like the fact that people were kind of exploiting certain terms, or certain not terms, certain quotes from Martin Luther King just to kind of provide an argument that he would have completely disagreed with. But um, I don't know. Like, I think it's important in history we just highlight the people, like the unsung heroes that just don't get talked about enough. Like, for instance, we talk about Rosa Parks, and Rosa Parks is an amazing person in history. She is an activist and needs to be remembered for all the great things she did. And I would say the great things that she did, even I like the great thing she did post bus incident, right? The reason I say that is because so like I don't even think it was post high school when I found out about Claudette Colvin and like learning the story of her. And um, so Claudette Colvin was like 13 years old at this time. And she was a darker skinned black girl that was on a bus and essentially had the exact same thing that happened to Rosa Parks, but much worse. So like the exact same scenario, but the outcome was much worse. So she refused to give up her seat to this white man, like, and basically the bus driver was trying to like force her out of it too, and like she was still like staying pat. So police were called to the scene, to the area, and the police officers like ran up into the bus and they grabbed her and like forcefully pulled her out, like pulling on her hair and different things like that, forcingly like dragging her out of the bus basically. When they put her in the squad car, one officer obviously got in the front to drive, and then another officer got in the back with her behind like the little caged area or whatever, and got in the back with her and started like groping her essentially the entire way to the station. And people were actually seeing this on the drive there because obviously like she's like screaming and like trying to fight and defend herself while this grown man is like putting his hands on her and stuff like that. So she gets to the jail cell, and she's being held there, and she's held there for like a day without anything and stuff like that. And then the next day she gets a visit, and she gets a visit from Martin Luther King. And the visit from Martin Luther King, uh, one of the things in history that one of the things that I understand, but I hate it. I hate this moment that happens. So he talks to her and, is sympathetic to what just happened to her and to the traumatic experience. But he asked her if he can retell her story. And the reasoning is because at the time, there was a prominent activist in the area who was of fair skin, who was of Black and Latina descent. And that person ended up being Rosa Parks. So
Mm.
what he was saying by retell her story is, and what ended up happening is he wanted to have Rosa Parks in the same scenario because one, she was already prominently known in the area, and then also there would be more attention and it would be more noticed if someone of this fair skin this happens to, because Claudette Colvin's like my shade, or dark, if not darker at the time, and so he wanted to reenact it essentially. When I say that too, I don't want it to take away from the Rosa Parks that situation, because it shouldn't, because it's still a risk, right? You still, at that time, that is a dangerous thing to do, and you're still taking a risk with that. But he just thought that it would be more receptive if Rosa Parks was the one that it happened to, and he was right. But I hate that he was right. I hate that. Like, I can't even fathom what was going through her head after that traumatic of a situation happening to her, and then someone coming up to you who you like you recognize as this like almost like hero figure, like this superhero of a person, and
Mm-hmm.
they say, hey, do you mind if I retell your story? And you kind of just go along with it, because, and I feel like now people don't recognize her much. I remember I wrote her a poem. It was like my freshman year of college, or right, maybe right before. But it was called "Before the Roses," and because I like saw like the New York address and stuff like that, where she lived. I don't even know if she's currently still alive, but I sent it, and just because I don't know, I just wanted to let her know that she wasn't forgotten. Because think about it, if that situation doesn't happen, then we may not even have the Rosa Parks situation. Like, that may have never transpired, and that's one of the biggest like acts in civil rights history. And we could have like completely not had it. And it really wasn't Rosa Parks' story. It was Claudette Colvin's story that just didn't get told, didn't get expressed. Um, so I don't know, stuff like that in history. We should talk about all those things. We should talk about Black artists in Black history. We should talk about like the Toni Morrisons, for instance, and Maya Angelou's, and the just I don't know, just so many. We should even talk about Black musical artists as well. Like, there's just so many things that I feel like it should be addressed that just aren't talked about. And in a sense, it's kind of the same logic if you think about it. The same logic that we were using for if certain funding goes here from a school to like a certain department, it naturally, even subconsciously, creates this idea that this is more important than that. Well, when we only go over like these small things in Black history and only talk about it for a certain amount of time, it does the same thing. It's the same damage. It's the same ideology that this is more important than that, or like we have to talk about this just because, but it's not that important. What's important is George Washington, all these war history, all this, like
Yeah.
what it makes it seem like. And it's just like that has to change, because it's just not one, it's not right. And to be honest, there should be diverse history in general, right? It shouldn't just be, I guess I got really tired of hearing about the same stories about the same white men, prominent white men in history over and over again. We should have women's history should be a part of regular history classes. It shouldn't be like, I mean, I'm glad it was its own class because it deserves its own class as well. I guess my point is that we should, when we're covering just history in general, like when you have a high school class and it's history, right? Say history one. History one should include women's history. Yes, I know war history is important to show how things happened, how like certain things sectioned out and all that. I get that. But then there should be a big portion of Black history, Black culture, even. Um, and so maybe because think about it, if we address Black culture, Black history, maybe there won't be so many microaggressions or so many things that happen, because to be honest, there's people that are just ignorant. It's not even, sometimes I don't even think it's that people are trying to be offensive or not understand. I think it's that they truly don't know, like,
Yeah, they
because
just don't know. Yeah.
these things. And we should learn about like Latino history. We should learn about, I
Yeah.
don't know, it should be more
Yeah.
diverse. It shouldn't just feel like history is talking about, the greatest like white people in history, like, which is sometimes what it feels like. And so, yeah, I know that was a long tangent, but I feel like it had to be said. It was just
Yeah,
on my
no. Yeah.
floor.
Yeah. I agree with you on all that. And I didn't even know about that whole story. So yeah, that's crazy. And like the thing is, like, stuff like that still happens today. Like, so
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just, yeah. But I totally agree with you. Like, stuff like women's history, like, and then like other races, like Asian American
Yes,
history, just
exactly.
Asian history,
Yep.
Latino history, like all that stuff should also be a part of the curriculum.
Yes.
Why do I have to wait until like, say I decide to go to college and I want to learn about, I have to like major in African American history or like African American studies, whatever, to like learn more about that. Like that's crazy. Like it should just already be something that whatever. But yeah.
Right.
Um but I mean, I guess to like sort of answer your question from a while back, I do think that slavery should be like sort of like its own, like I guess, unit or like
Yes.
topic or whatever
Yeah.
discussion, because I do think that it is interesting that like that's sort of like the chunk of like talking about Black history in a sense.
Hmm.
And I think in a sense it's sort of like, I guess, I don't know if that's like the right word to use, but I feel like in a sense it's sort of like glorifying it in a sense, like
Yes. Yeah.
because we keep like we're like mainly focusing on it, like that's part specifically, but not like the good stuff that happened in Black history and like the other whatever. So yeah, I um I definitely think that slavery could be like or should be its own like section in its own unit because um people sort of like, and also when they teach it to us they're sort of like they just it's like very like cherry picking on like what
Yes.
they sort of say about it and like brushing over like just how messed up it was and like how
Yeah.
deep the trauma like is and like
Yeah.
they just made it seem like, oh yeah, this happened and it was really bad, it sucked, but then this person
Yeah.
came in and then it just made it all the more better and now it's just like now we have Martin Luther King Jr. and it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm.
I was
And it's just like yeah.
well. I didn't mean to interrupt. But I was going to say just real quick that one of the things I noticed too is that like they talk about it and like yeah, it's terrible. It's a tough time for Black people in the world. And then like, all right, but here's how it was financially like good
Yeah.
for them. Like they go straight into like the slave trade and how like all these.
Yes.
It's like what?
They'll like they'll say all this stuff about it and then they'll like show us like a cute little documentary and then we'll just move on and this is
Yeah,
like
exactly.
okay,
Just,
cool.
right,
But
right.
I just yeah, I do think because that's another thing that you also mentioned, like the whole like I don't think that like people necessarily like the whole like microaggressions. Like if we had there's more education, there wouldn't be as much microaggressions, whatever.
Yeah,
Because I do agree. I feel like there are people out there that just genuinely don't know because they didn't have the information, they didn't have
right,
the right information and the
right.
necessary information as well. And
Exactly.
so and if we just keep repeating these same narratives, these same stories over and over with each new generation that comes in, it's just like it also ties into not like being able to progress, not being able to
Yeah,
see any real change because we keep being told the same stuff over and over again.
right.
And like it's just it's sad. It's very sad. But
Yeah.
I yeah. I mean, but then it's like, I mean, what can not to say like what can we do, but I guess just like how would we sort of like be able to take those steps to sort of like work towards providing the providing the more information or whatever because like
Hmm.
you could because I mean like I feel like the best way to sort of learn something is to like do your own research about it outside of school, but I mean
Right.
like not every kid is gonna like want to go and like search up like a certain thing outside the classroom or like want to go to the library and like get a book about whatever and like do their own research, so it's just like I don't know, but yeah.
Right. Well, I think this is something. So one, I think I've thought about for a long time, like maybe help, like somehow putting together like some kind of petition, I guess, to for the advancement of Black history in schools, but then also maybe in the same ways that schools, like because sometimes um, like for instance, the we'll say a language teacher, all right, will be signed to a high school like or high schools in the area, um, and won't be necessarily like a I don't know. Like I I guess what I was trying to say is that they should either bring in someone or they should assign like an actual like Black history like major, or bring in someone that is of color and let them like teach the class, and maybe that would help out with things, and it could be kind of I don't know. I just I feel like there's just so many. That's the thing. You're right. It is because I don't want to when we're going to be discussing a lot of things on our podcast about things that we would like to see change, like to see shift, and we can recognize the issues. But it is important also. I'm glad you brought this up because it's important for us to also try to provide some kind of solution. What are ways that we could naturally do this? I think that for one, like I said, like a petition maybe to change and update things just because we need to. Like the thing, honestly, that's just in general, right? Curriculum just needs to be updated like constantly because there's constantly things changing. There's, new laws that are put into place. There's there should be, we should go into depth about a lot of things that in every year it should be like a new, I don't know, like a new concept of what we're going to cover this year, how we're going to cover things. Um, but yeah, some sort of petition because I really think that um, not only like Black kids that I guess think the way that we do similarly is like not only will they I think be on board with it, but at the same time I think that like Black parents would be on board with it too because they want their kid to be educated in their history because how can I saw like it's like how can you understand yourself if you don't understand where you come from,
Yeah.
right? Like, so like in a sense, like in order to understand thyself, you kind of need to understand the past and understand different things. And I don't know. I guess like getting a bunch of people on board to do that and to like fight it like we would fight anything, like push it the way we would push anything, like on social media having pages dedicated to it, or starting like an online petition, having a website for people to sign off on, having it getting it pushed to government and getting it kind of put into effect, or bringing it to the attention of our leaders in like the state sense, or like stuff like that, or I don't know, just going about it different ways like that. But as far as like the school level, that could just be hiring like history teachers, like
Yeah. Yeah.
like just stuff like that, like just I don't know, that all those things I feel like could contribute to true change being made to where society is just much more educated. It's because it's like it's unfortunate too, like we just talk about education in general, that it feels like sometimes it's so hard to attain it, and then once you and what I mean by that is I mean financially, because it takes like a 2.0 to get into some places, but no, like financially though, it has to be right, there has to be more, I don't know, like a better way for people to be able to get on the same playing field as everyone else, and then and not once they do achieve those educational whatever they wanted to pursue, like and once they do achieve those things, they're not drowning in debt forever and trying to catch up to those things. It just that's a whole other issue, I feel like, but still, I mean, definitely podcast worthy one, but
Yeah.
um, I don't know. There's just education definitely needs like a facelift for sure. It needs
Yeah.
some work, needs some things done. But yeah, but
Yeah. Yeah. I guess speaking more on that, that was something that I sort of wanted to sort of like talk about a little bit, just like the like heavy emphasis on like sort of like going to college, or like with schools, like specifically high school, there was like such a heavy emphasis on like, okay, either you're gonna go to college or you're just gonna go straight into the workforce, and that sort of
yeah,
seemed like your only two options. Like after school, there
yeah,
was no other. There was no really like big discussion like community colleges or like trade schools or whatever. Like
exactly.
And it was just so weird. Or going to the military, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know, cause like I spoke a little bit on sort of like how my school was set up. Like once you hit sophomore year, you had to choose like a pathway, and that
Yeah.
was sort of like you could choose from like anything from like nursing to cosmetology to like agriculture, IT, whatever.
Yeah.
And whatever you chose, you had to stick with up until you graduated.
Right.
And like every year you would have to take a class dedicated to that pathway. And so
Yeah.
even having to like be put in that structured environment right off the bat, it sort of like caused a lot of like frustration, specifically for me, because I mean, I just feel like at that young of an age, like how can you really just like pick something and then just like
Right.
want to stick with it for the rest of for the next 3 years or so? Like that's crazy to me. And that's
Yeah.
something that I've always like thought about, like when it comes to like thinking about what you're going to do once you leave school and like what your options are.
Mhm.
And it sort of like makes you feel like you sort of have to like limit yourself into sort of like what it is that you want to do, because you feel like, oh well, when I was in school, this is what they taught me and this is what I had available to me, and these were the only options I felt like I could really pursue. So
Mhm.
the idea of like doing something outside of the norm seems so dangerous and scary and impossible, but it's
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
And so I don't know, I just feel like I just wish that there was more like discussion about like alternatives to not even just to college, but just more discussion on like different sort of, I guess, career paths or just things that you could do
Right.
outside of like just being a student.
Yeah.
Cause I don't know, I feel like, yeah, I don't know, but that's just sort of my little uh tidbit on that.
Yeah, no, I can completely agree, and also because some people, let's just be like, come full circle with it in the sense that not everybody is always ready at the exact same times to do things, right? So
Yeah.
so also we need to like, I know this is like the most popular word like of 2020/2021. But we need to normalize that and, like you said, just provide more information about certain things and just, I don't know, make it feel like it's not because we're literally going from, I mean, that's a dramatic shift, right? From high school to anything that you decide to do and pursue. And so, um, I don't know, like it doesn't need to feel like so daunting and that like it's so easy to fail here. Like there's no like support here. There just needs, I agree with that like 1,000%. Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah.
that's a big thing. But yeah, and oh man, there's just so many like different things. And one thing that just came to mind is, I would say there needs to be more there needs to be more clubs. There needs to be more clubs about things
Yeah.
because and look, and my thing is that that is a way to for us for it's for me, it would seem like if the school didn't want to put like funding in certain areas, or if they didn't want to like have to feel like have like certain classes, that's a way that they could get away with it. They didn't like, okay, well,
Yeah.
we have this club that you can join that,
Yeah.
sure, you deal with it, like you all have your own funding or your own like things like that, because then it allows like people like a platform to pursue those things and then find, honestly, find friendship, find like, people that have interests similar to you, find people that want to do the things similar to you, and then also typically I would say find a group of people that will embrace that with you, like embrace like your
Hmm.
creativeness, because let's just be honest, it's not like people in high school for the most part are like, it's the coolest thing ever to be an artist. It's just like sometimes it's just not like how it's like talked about. So to have a group of people like dedicated to this club, there just needs to be more clubs. It'd be cool if there was like a poetry club or like a, uh,
Yeah.
I don't know, like just yeah. There's so many.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, yeah, no. I feel like that there is sort of that like academic like emphasis when it comes to school, but that social aspect of school is also equally as important. And
Right.
so if like it would be dope if there was just more clubs. I mean, I remember in like middle school,
Mhm.
I remember in middle school we had like book clubs and
Yeah.
like we even had like an anime club that like one of my history teachers started, and like we had little stuff like that, but it was still very like small,
Yeah.
minority versus
Right.
like the like the stereotypical clubs or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just that would be amazing too if there was just like more clubs
Mhm.
in schools dedicated to like all sorts of hobbies and stuff. And um yeah, I mean, plus it would just help because like at least for me, like my social skills were non-existent when I was a student, when I was in school. And
Yeah.
like I'm still sort of like having to, I guess, teach myself how to like be better in social situations and like how to, I just like, I don't know, going back to like when you mentioned that like there should be more classes on like how to be a good person, all that,
Yeah.
like classes on like emotional intelligence and all that stuff, like it
Yeah.
would, I feel like it would have helped someone like me out a lot
Mhm.
because like it's not enough to like just go to like the guidance counselor about what kind of problems you have or whatever, like
Right.
because I mean like some of these counselors don't really be helping as much as like as you would want them to. And
Yeah.
if you're not in a situation where like you can go to your parents or like
Yeah.
you can't afford to go to a therapist or whatever, or like it's just
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know, but I yeah, I agree with you on that.
Is it just me too? Speaking of, this is just something that just dawned on me. Is should there be like a school like separately from the counselors, because counselors also handle a lot of things as far as helping you like as far as like colleges college information and stuff like that goes, like
Yeah.
they're already doing their own thing there. But shouldn't there almost be like a school therapist or like a school psychiatrist,
Yeah.
like just think about
Yeah.
how helpful that would be, like just like because there, let's just be frank, there's times where you just like there's so many things maybe going on in your life or like things at home or even things that you like just never processed that but you're still struggling with, that you need to talk to somebody about them. And sometimes, like you said, it's not available, like it's not just available to just go to a therapist or like to, and maybe like in, I can relate as far as like, and I'm sure we both can really, that it just in like we'll say black culture, but I'm sure like other like people of color in general, or it's not prominent to talk about those things. It's, it's not really discussed. And so it would be very beneficial if there was someone that was kind of just there for that purpose. Like if this, say that all of a sudden there's a kid in school, or like, because there's always this, right? Where his grades or her grades or whoever's grades are all of a sudden like they were a good student and now they're just like their grades are plummeting like all of a sudden like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, and like then to be able to like pull them in like, hey, like, I'm here to help, and just like good to talk, like because sometimes you just need that. And talking is so healthy about things like that, and so I don't know, that would be great too. Gosh, there so many things.
Yeah.
uh, and I get that the school has to prioritize certain things because they get like an annual budget on like what they can spend money on. But I feel like that would be something that would be a necessity, especially with the fact of, again, I know I made the reference earlier that it's not 1980, it's 2021. Like same thing though, like the conversation of mental health is opening up, and it's a lot more. It's something that we can really address and talk about, and I don't think it's something to be like ashamed of or anything. And it's kind of funny too. Like you never know who could be affected by certain things. I remember talking with one of my friends who, like one of the best football players that we've ever had at my school or whatever, and like talking to him about therapy and like how helpful it was and how his views about it originally and like all those things, and how he was so like it was kind of like close to vest with that. And like I don't know, it just kind of goes to show that anyone can be impacted by certain things. And so I don't know, that to me just seems like it should just be a given that that's like something that's implemented in school, um, especially high school, because not only are you dealing with those things, but you're also starting to deal with like obviously physical changes. You're starting to deal with more pressure for certain things, whether that's pressure like as far as relationships go, pressure as far as like doing certain things, pressure as far as like going out places, pressure even in a sexual sense. There's that. And I just think that someone to help, there, there needs to be something in place to help someone process all these things so they're not managing it by themselves, which is honestly more often than not dealing with it at all and just burying it and
Yeah.
suppressing it. And that's just not healthy at all. And so I don't know. That definitely would be something also that would be just so necessary to add to schools. And I feel like it comes like it may be a little biased because I work in the mental health field now, but it just needs to be. I don't know. That just seems like it like a duh. Like why we of course we have that like and it's not. So
Yeah, yeah. I would even argue like even as young as like middle school age, because I feel
oh,
like
of course, yeah.
for at least for someone like me, like I feel like if I, because a lot of well, okay, I'll say traumatic. A lot of traumatic stuff as far as like family wise happened to me during that middle school time, and it's sort of like tied into me having a lot of like low self esteem in middle school, having a lot of like um really bad like mental health issues in middle school, and it just like ruined my overall experience during
Right.
those 3 years. And so if I had if I would have had access to a therapist even back then, I feel like it would have, helped me a lot. I guess just sort of like getting through that part of my life, and like even getting through like high school, and just, because I mean, I feel like in middle school, like back then I was such a miserable person during that time period. And like, I don't know, I think with the whole like me sort of like switching up, junior year of high school, like
Mhm.
that period before then, it was rough. And so I stuff like that, like an emphasis on like mental health and all that stuff definitely would have been beneficial. And I feel like it would be beneficial to a lot of people, because even with this like transition to um like online classes or whatever, I
Mm,
have a younger sister who is in middle school,
right.
and it really affected her. Like, she went from being like a very, like high, like getting like really good grades, to like literally on like the border of like failing, just from like making that transition, because it was really hard on her. And obviously, like, she doesn't really have like access to a therapist like that, and like it really affected her mental health, like this whole being stuck inside all day, because it's a dramatic transition from being able to see your friends every day to now I
Right.
gotta be sitting up in the house all day, by myself in a sense. And like, just, stuff like that. And yeah, I definitely feel like if there are more like mental health professionals like in a setting like school, it definitely
Hmm.
would. I don't know if it would fix a lot of problems, but it would definitely like help sort of make that experience for a lot of kids a lot, I guess, more manageable.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and again, and you're. I'm glad you said something too. It's. I don't. Yeah, I don't know if think it would necessarily fix like certain things, but it definitely would help. It wouldn't hurt, obviously,
yeah,
to have that. And I just think too, of like so many instances where, like, say someone who um, was kind of I don't know. Just imagine like how many things could have been prevented. I think you're kind of get what I'm alluding to. If someone would have had someone to talk to, like if they would have just had
yeah,
someone that felt like that someone cared about what they were going through or dealing with, how many things that could have, how many terrible things that could have been prevented, and um, which is a whole other topic. I understand, but still, like it just I don't know. I think about that quite often, to be honest, just because you're right. The From a young age, right? And I get it. I get in a sense, when you release your kids off to school or like when kids like going to the school, you kind of do want them to kind of find their path a little bit. But it's also so beneficial for like there to be like I don't know, some help as far as like social, and then maybe like even like intentional help from like teachers, like intentionally making like students like maybe not even do an assignment, not do an assignment either, but like just talk, like make them like, all right, find something you have in common with such and such, or like it literally
Yeah.
just switch it like that. The first day, say like in first grade or something, like those are the first days of school, is just like, all right, so you talk to such and such for 15 minutes and then switch, and then like at the end of it go to the person that you talked, like that you felt like you connected to with the most or whatever. Obviously you word that differently, but still, like
Yeah.
and then like you naturally can, you know, create friendships and create opportunities to talk, because everyone needs that at some level. And you're right, like the social element of things is let's just be honest, it's difficult sometimes, especially it's really difficult at every point, right? Because it's difficult in elementary school, it's definitely different whenever you go to middle school, it's obviously a bigger place too, and then that jump from eighth grade to high school, like again, it's like, I don't know, gosh, yeah, that just seems to be that. I don't know. There just needs to be a lot of things with that. Again, um, obviously, you can't do the same things at every level to try to help the social aspect of things, but that would be another reason to have more clubs for the high school, because one of the things that you could do as an introduction for freshmen in high school is have like all these different clubs that they could be a part of, and
Yeah.
like they can get to know people that they have things in common with, that they actually have similar interest with. And I don't know. I feel like there's ways to fix things. It's just that they haven't been valued to fix. Like, I think the idea is that, oh, well, like, you know, that's part of high school, is you got to go out and find friends and find things, like as if it's like you're all on your own to, you know.
Yes, that's why I wanted to like bring up like the whole like every man for himself, like this
Yeah.
individualistic mindset of like, well, I mean, once you get to the real world, like no one's gonna help you out, anymore. No one's gonna hold your hand anymore. Like you're on your own, gotta figure it out. It's just like it doesn't have to be that way though.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be like this like lonely experience and like you gotta go out, you gotta whatever. It's like no. That's why the social aspect is so important because like at the end of the day, like we're social creatures, like we need each other.
Exactly.
Even if it's as simple as just like doing what we're doing right now, is just talking about stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up though.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it's a major thing. And I don't know. Everyone kind of has to, everybody has to have people to talk to. Everybody needs outlets for things. And so I think that we just need to have an emphasis on that. High school doesn't have to just be education all the time. They're like, it can be real world stuff. It can be socialization, because obviously we know that socialization is a huge part of high school and things, and middle school and all those things. But I feel like the again, like kind of like saying before, like it's put on the kid to find that. It's not something that's talked about. Like you said, there should definitely be a socialization class, because again, like that would help with so many things, right? Like not even the socialization and the fact of like talking to friends, or like, you know, finding people like that, but like like how to approach certain things, how to I know like I know some individuals to this day that still like have, like, we'll say like their approach to women, for instance, is still like horrible, but like there I don't know, there should be, I don't know, a class in just talking and just communicating and just socializing, because otherwise, like, what if that person never grasps those things naturally? That's the thing that
Yeah.
like it's not as cut and dry as like when a baby's born, they're gonna have to they're gonna learn to stand, then they're gonna learn to walk, they're gonna fall, then they're gonna learn to run. Like it's not as like cut and dry. That what if like they never go through that? What if they never like even get the, like, I don't know, like get out of the starting blocks, and that could be impacted by the school. Like there are ways to fix that to where that's not the case. But sigh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm glad that we're talking about this thing, because I feel like it. I feel like if it's addressed, it's not. this whole conversation is not addressed in depth. It doesn't cover all the things that we've talked about. And also, I feel like it doesn't ever come from the perspective of ours that we currently have, the unique perspective of people that are removed from high school, not far removed from high school, but removed from it in the sense and can give that perspective of what was necessary then. Because if you think about it, the things that we're even saying, like, they're like, we'll say 6 years from now, what we're saying is going to be outdated. Well, there's going to be need to have like another conversation about this, but it's
True.
still important to just have to talk about these things because I feel like we're still far behind as far as things like that we could have to help. There needs to be real life things in high school that could just help out, and that would be just, I don't know, very beneficial. And um, also there needs to be um, this is another reason, like, so with our ideas, they would definitely have, like, the classes being shorter, that would definitely have to happen for this to be possible. But even like there needs to be safe places, and what I mean by that is safe places for kids to either air out like the things that are going through, whether that is a therapist or an actual place where, like, a bunch of kids could go to, like almost like a class, but like
Hmm.
they could air out things that are either bothering them or whatever. Or especially for, like, we talked about equality the other day, but like people who are struggling with, like, identification or coming out or being themselves in general, right? Those things, I don't know. There needs to be like a place for that, because I think about the fact that I know I talked about this the other day, but still, I got to be luckily a part of starting an equality club, being a part of an equality club at my high school. Which, in hindsight, that should have been a thing before it was made one. But I understand also that we live in where we live. But um, I I just and that was so beautiful, because not only was it a place to learn about different all types of different things and have discussions about all types of different things, but also it was a place for everyone to feel comfortable and everyone to feel included in it and everyone to feel that they could be themselves. Like, this is because what if they think about it, if they don't have a place to do that at home, they don't feel like comfortable enough to do that at school, they're never
Yeah.
a chance to be themselves. And so they I don't know, there just needs to be more things like that. There needs to be, oh yeah, so many things, so many things. But it just seems like that would just be, I don't know. So I guess, like, the main points is, like, expand history. It is not white. It does not have to be whitewashed. It can be about, they could, because before I go on, I was gonna summarize, but I can't even summarize, because I was gonna say that the thing about, real quick, I guess the whole reason that we would need to expand history and talk about all types of different ethnic groups and races and all types of different things, all different elements of history, is because think about the country that we live in. Like,
Yeah.
we literally live in the most diverse place in the world, because if you think about it, not even diverse in social aspects, I feel like America is like the one place you can go where you can go to different points of the country. Like, you go to different places and experience all different types of climate. Like, it's not just like hot here. It's like there's so many different things. And even if it's hot, like, say, like, in the hot in the south and the hot in the like on the west coast is so different. Like, I don't know. I feel like you can experience a bunch of different things, just like you can experience a bunch of different people, cultures, and things like that. So I feel like, how can we have history that only talks about, like, the European element of things, when, like, the country itself holds so many different types of people and holds so many different types of, like, backgrounds and things like that. So that in itself should be a reason for us to expand history and be talking about way more things than what we talk about currently. Um, but to summarize, like, a little bit, is like, one, social hierarchies, just, they're silly. And kids that are in high school, don't fall into that trap. Just get over yourself. It's okay
Just
to
be
talk about
yourself, bro. It's fine. Just be
exactly.
yourself. That's all.
Exactly.
That's all you need to know. Just be yourself. You're gonna
Right.
be okay.
Yeah. Be yourself. Talk to whoever you want to talk to. Talk to anybody. Don't be afraid to approach people. You never know who could be your best friend at the end of high school. Um,
Facts.
and then, expand history. Gosh, expand history. Please don't like only talk about slavery and Martin Luther King for Black history. And just have more clubs, have school therapists on call, and then just have places where kids can be themselves. Where part of high school is finding yourself and finding who you like to be around, finding like the things that you like. So, have places like that are safe zones like that, and then have classes that are real world things like that can help with real world finances, can help with understanding um, like I don't know, there needs to be classes on like finding like buying like properties and apartments and like different things like that and managing leases, all the types of stuff. There needs to be classes on just like we said, like socialization, relationships, because it doesn't come natural to everybody. It's not a one-stop thing where like everybody can just, oh, once you get to high school, magically you'll just be able to talk to
Yeah,
anybody. It that needs to be something, and then relationships, and then just um, then sex. I feel like part of it is that sometimes I think schools are afraid to touch those subjects, but they're so important. And by
yeah,
that time, kids are some of them are already participating in those things, and then they're just
yeah,
learning by themselves, and nobody
yeah,
like like that just sounds crazy, right? But it's like so it needs to be addressed. Like all those things need to be talked about. All those things need to be preparatory because if we're being frank, that point, that end of high school, that graduation, that for some people is going to be the last destination of education. So there has to be emphasis on life. So that
yep,
way you are preparing them for what's going to happen when they finally get that diploma and they throw that cap in the air.
yep,
You know,
yeah, and also like the whole like, cause I because I feel like part of the if we're speaking on like the sexual education sort of
yeah,
aspect of it, like I think part of the reason is that like the schools expect like the parents to like take over and like cover that aspect, but it's like
yeah,
even there are some parents who are not even like wanting to teach their kids. At least in my experience, I'll be 20 next month. I still haven't had the talk with my parents, and it's like there's still a lot of like the fact that I have to learn that I've learned more about sex like through the internet versus
right.
like through any class or like textbook or whatever is ridiculous, and like it shouldn't have to be that way. So yeah, it's just I don't know. It's yeah, like you said, a lot of work needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate thing, and I mean, and that's the thing. I don't want to be I want to make sure too that like if there's any like teachers or anything watching, it's not that we're trying to be harsh on these things. It's just that these things have to change to be able to truly be able to help the kids and to truly be able to, well, I actually I want to stop using that term too because that's in a sense part of I guess an issue as well. It is young adults that we're dealing with, right? Like when you get to high
Mm-hmm.
school, freshman year on, like you were a young adult basically, and I don't know. There has to be things in place to help that process and help that. Um, I don't know, so many different things because things are just different in high school. You just like I said, like there's obviously the physical changes, but um, changes in like what interest you have. There's changes in um, I don't know, like just the groups you hang out with. Like there's just so many things happening. There's probably like one of the like probably the first instances of like true anxiety, like heavy anxiety or things like that. That all these things like there just needs to be more things to help them manage through that because the changes that they're going through that is so big and that's such an impactful point in time, right? For anyone, and that's just a huge pivotal point in the human experience. And I don't know. I guess it just shouldn't be just you know simplified or like certain things should just be taken for granted like oh they'll get that on their own or like we don't have to go into depth here or we're afraid to talk about these certain things or subjects. It can't be like that because the I don't know, they're just that's it's just so necessary, I guess, is the biggest thing. So yeah. But yeah, I think we've kind of covered like everything there, and I don't know. I really enjoyed this one just because it allowed us to get to be passionate about certain things and to really just talk about things that we're able to, again, and we were thinking some probably similar things at the time, but in hindsight really be able to like think to ourselves like, gosh, this is so necessary, especially now that we're in the real world and we're experiencing certain things. It's like, God, it would have been great to have this knowledge about the world or these different interactions, at an earlier time. So
Yeah.
and I guess the last thing I want to say too, like last idea of like is for like schooling and stuff like that. It's just from things I've seen. There needs to be like also a place like as long with all the other things that we've named, there also needs to be a self appreciation like thing, like a place like where you discuss like the where everybody's like can kind of like talk about the positives amongst each other about different people, about like different people that they interact with, and because it's so big too to find that self respect and that self worth. Because if you leave there without that, that can cause you to spiral or stumble in life as well, and get into relationships that aren't good and that aren't positive and that are get into situations that just aren't like you being you. And especially at that time too, because think about all the peer pressure and all the different things that are happening at that time. It's just that people need to know that their worth and that everyone is important and that everyone has value in this crazy thing that we call a world, where we're in the middle of space spinning millions of miles per hour. uh, there just needs to be I don't know, like people need to be appreciated or feel valued, and that would help with the fact of like the social hierarchy thing. Like you could kind of get that tossed out of the window if people are able to see that other people are struggling with things, but then also that find like realizing that everyone has a value, everybody has an importance, because the world doesn't just need like one particular group of people. It needs like it needs everyone. It needs
Hmm.
it needs the artist. It needs the um, everything. If like, and I think that's what high school it does. I don't know if it represents it now, but I think it should represent that. It should represent like a community in the sense that, um, like um, the school kind of, if there's not all different types of people that are have all different types of interests that represent the school in different ways, then I don't know, it just doesn't thrive, right? If there's not people who enjoy photo editing and taking pictures and stuff like that, then there's no yearbook. If there's not people
Yeah.
who and that goes for everything, like, right? There just has to be like, I guess, a realization of that you have a place in the here, and then that translates not the social hierarchy, but the fact that you have
Hmm.
value in the world translates outside of high school, and I think that needs to be emphasized. So yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. I feel like we probably talked about this like as much as we can talk about, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this episode. I think it's super necessary to talk about what we talked about and just discuss. And I think this is a podcast for so many people. I think it's a podcast for people our age to kind of discuss. Yeah, like these are definitely things I wish were in high school or all that. I think it's positive for people who are in high school to maybe have ideas to talk to their
Yeah.
principals or their whoever administrators about certain things. I think it's a podcast for parents to realize that some of these things aren't getting addressed in school, and that they maybe could even try to help like in that by talking about certain things and discussing certain things with their kid. It's just that I don't know. I think it's a podcast that everyone can kind of relate to, because everyone remembers high school and everybody has positive memories, not so positive memories. And I don't know. I think that hopefully everybody enjoys this podcast. And again, this is a podcast where we would like to have input from other people, and, maybe even revisit this topic down the line. And so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If I mean, yeah, if there is anyone out there that's like watching this or listening to this, like, just know that um, I guess specifically for like those who are still in high school, like if you do sort of like have these feelings about school or whatever, like know that you're not alone in that, like, and that's like another thing too, sort of like circling back, like
Mhm.
the whole need for like these clubs or whatever, and just like emphasis on like the social aspect, like once you sort of break down these like barriers that we sort of like put up between each other,
Yeah.
like you'll start to realize just like how much in common like we have with each other just as a people. And
Yep.
so just know that like if you're listening to this, like understand that you're not alone. And I can't promise that like if you are in high school and maybe you're, you know, it's like it's a rough experience for you or you're going through a rough time or whatever, like I can't promise that it'll get better or that it will get worse or whatever, but like
Mhm.
I will say that it's a whole nother world out there outside
Yeah.
of that school building. I'll tell you that much. It's a whole nother world out there. So
Yeah.
like just, you know, and yeah, I mean, if there's anyone out there who yeah, like I said, know that you're not alone. And again, like if anyone's listening to this podcast, like you're more than welcome to add to the conversation and
Yeah.
to share your thoughts. And like, you know, I would love to be able to do like a Q&A session one time or like
Yeah.
whatever, have like Q&A segment where you just answer questions or whatever. But like yeah, I mean, I enjoy doing this podcast. I enjoy having these discussions. I enjoy being able to just share all these ideas and just get all these thoughts out, because
Yeah.
it's important to just talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And as someone who struggles with talking, like just on the daily and just like in, you know, everyday situations, I feel
Mhm.
like this is sort of like a really good outlet for me to sort of just like express all the things that like I probably wouldn't have been brave enough to discuss while I was still in high school or like even just last year. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's yeah, I just yeah. If anyone, you know, has been watching this podcast up to this point, like it's very much appreciated. We really do appreciate y'all, and like we enjoy doing this. And I'm like so happy that like we're able to do like have something like this and to just like be able to take it as far as we've took it so far. And so like I'm even excited to like even share like the ideas that we've had and to
Yeah.
do those in the future. And just like yeah, it's definitely gonna be like a fun podcast where we get to talk about all sorts of stuff, and I'm very excited. So yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess I was just saying, you know, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and you know, we appreciate you.
Very much so. I second that. There we go. Thank you all.
All right. Bye.